Good morning, this is Country Fellow Speaks here, and today I want to talk about fusing tips. Yesterday's video was about doing a backyard display, doing a show using pallets, or if you're going to not use pallets, and you're going to have multiple stages, putting it to music and different things. So today I actually want to talk about some tips that I have found on fusing. Number one, as I said yesterday, make sure before your show, whether you're doing pallets, whether you're just doing the demo guy, where you name the name and like, hey crowd, we're going to do Pirate Captain and here's what it does, and just do those. I mean, even if you're going to do that kind of show and there's nothing wrong with that, go ahead and expose your fuses the day of or in the garage so that you don't have to dig around for these things using a flashlight. Especially if you're shooting some things that have the little tissue paper on them. Make sure you tear that tissue paper off. Get that fuse ready. By the way, don't try to light the tissue paper. That rarely works. Or if they come in these little boxes, make sure you open it up, find the fuse, get the fuse ready to go. Your crowd's going to appreciate it because there's going to be less downtime. They will really appreciate if you have your fuses exposed. Alright, so let's talk about how I fuse my fireworks. I do use a firing system. However, I use a firing system to fire off the first firework, and I have everything else fused together. And the reason why I do that is because I have fewer cues to worry about hitting the buttons, fewer misfires I have to worry about. So I'd rather just let the first one ignite, let the fuse do all its work. Plus I get to stand back, I get to watch, I get to look for safety issues, I get to make sure that there's something that, just in case there's something I need to focus on other than firing every single one. Now, by the way, if you want to do that, that's fine. If you have the Cobra system where you can time everything online and everything, that's fine. I just don't do that. So I wanted to talk to you about, okay, how do I use these fuses to connect different cakes? And I'm going to give you some tips on what I stumbled across as good or bad. So let's say I want to take this and I'm going to do a display of about 6 or 8, 12, 15 cakes. I want this to be my first one. What I would suggest you do, only because it's the first one in that display, is make a little bit extra fuse here if you're using an igniter, because this igniter will not go around 2 fuses. However, if you go a little bit extra, it will go around that. And when I talk about timing later, consider that you have the little extras to put your igniter on it. If you're not doing igniter, you don't have to do that. You would just go end to end, and I will tell you this is the better way to light it if you're doing a lighter or the such, is to make sure they're touched. So how do I secure these things? Obviously you could use some masking tape. I don't like masking tape so much though, because if I decide to go back and put something later, I have to take this tape off. This tape folds and different things. So I suggest using little zip ties. And it's good to have an extra set of hands available if you have them. If not, that's okay. So let's say I'm getting ready to fuse this thing up. So I would suggest you take your first zip tie and you would put it on there, whether you wrap around, slide it down, whatever you're gonna do. And I would take this first one and I would go just as close as possible to that firework there, to make sure you get the maximum connection, so that this fuse might go off, or has a better chance to go off. And you'll notice if you do that, they kind of separate though. So I suggest taking a second zip tie and putting it on the end so that it pulls everything together really, really tightly, really nicely, and you have a secure connection. And then if you do that, you'll notice that the fuses are touching the whole time, so there's a greater chance you're going to get ignition. So then I would run this fuse along however it's going to be, and I'm going to probably do a different video on how to do the timing of the fuses. I might throw it into this video, depending on how long the video gets. But depending on how long this fuse is before it gets to the next cake, I may have to tape this fuse there. You don't want these fuses just hanging off. because they'll get snagged, torn, pulled. Somebody will trip over them. It'll fall on the grass, get wet from the dew. So I suggest taping these fuses. Yes, it will burn through the tape. You don't have to worry about that. Now, when you get to the second firework, this is very, very important because I have actually had this failure happen to me once. When you get to the second firework, you need to notice which way your fire is going to come in. If I'm lighting this fuse, I know the fire's coming in this way. And if the fire's coming in this way, coming in this direction, I don't want to fuse my second firework like this, which is usually the default method that your brain wants it to do. You want it to just go with the flow. Don't do this, because sure, it might ignite here, but what if it just slightly burns this fuse, singes it, the fuse doesn't go off, but then it goes down and it decides, hey, now I want to ignite. Well, it's not gonna, your firework's not gonna go off because you've already singed your fuse here. You burnt some black powder out of it. It didn't light. So whatever happens here is not going to fire off the cake. I would suggest you point your fuses in the direction or towards the fire coming at them. So the fire comes along the fuse. When it hits the second one, hey, now it's going to hit here and then go on to the next one. Same thing, when I do my fuse, I want my fuse coming in the same direction. Or excuse me, pointing towards the direction of the fire. Also, you'll notice on the tips of all these fuses that there's black powder there. And you want that black powder to get exposed to the incoming fire, because that's going to be a greater chance of it firing instead of just firing here on the edge of the fuse. If fire goes into the tip of the fuse, there's a greater chance that it's going to fire. So direction of your fire is very important. You should make sure that you do that. Make sure you cover your fuses when you have extra. Also, I would say look at your artillery shells over here. For example, this one. If you're going to do artillery shells, and if you're using the small, or if you're using these, that's fine. But even if you're using these, open the box of artillery shells before the show. Whether or not you're going to do a rack, open them before the show. Go ahead and pull all the fuses so that they're ready to go before the show. That way, when you're ready to shoot these things, it's an easier just drop in and fire it instead of trying to pull this fuse out and you have to fumble and try to find it. Have the fuse ready to go and then have it already set in there to be shot or whatever. I would strongly suggest that you do that. Have your cakes prepped for the fuses. Have your artillery shells prepped for that. Now, as for fuse timing, usually, and this, I may go over this in the next video too, but these artillery shells, you're usually looking at 5 to 7 seconds from the time you light the fuse till it goes off. That's something you might want to consider for consumer artillery shells. On consumer cakes and other fireworks, you're generally looking at 3 seconds. So 5 to 7 seconds on the artillery, 3 seconds here. So you might want to consider that if you're timing your show like I usually do, because I put mine to music. Let's say you want to fire two fireworks at once and you're doing the connecting fuse. That is perfectly possible. I have never had a failure from splicing in multiple fireworks at once. However, it can get very tedious. So I would suggest you have an extra set of hands so that one person is holding all the pieces together and the other person's putting the zip tie on those. It can get a little tight in there, but you can fuse it. And I have never had these not go off when I put multiple fuses together. I've had up to 5 different fuses together all at once with one feeder fuse. And the one feeder fuse has always ignited all of those if you're using your zip ties to pull everything as tight as possible. Now I would say this, if you're fusing more than 2 or 3, I might use a 3rd zip tie and zip tie it in 3 places to make sure you have the maximum connection on those. Also, let's say you cut your fuse. you know, I didn't get the correct distance. Yes, you can splice these. Don't splice them like this, however. You don't want to splice them like this, because then when you try to stretch it out, you're actually pulling apart the thing that you actually put together, and your fire will come through here, and it's probably going to mess up your timing. I would suggest you fuse them facing in opposite directions, and then you zip tie these on both ends to make sure you get the good connection. So that's what I would say doing on the splicing. So if you are using a firing system, I want to go over that with you too. So let's say I want to attach this igniter to this firework. I want to show you some mistakes I made, and I had to find a video to see why so many of mine were failing. Show you the wrong things to do at first. With these little igniters, do not put the fuse straight into the mouth. I thought that's why that gap was there. Didn't work so well. I also looked at this, and you'll notice a real fine filament in there. I thought, okay, you take this fuse and you go underneath that filament in that gap. Again, wrong. Didn't work out so well. These things are actually made to do what you would think they are supposed to do. You just open the mouth, let the thing eat the fuse, and close it and smash it down to get a good. And that's the way those igniters work. Just let it go so that the little filament wraps around the fuse when the little thing closes on it. If you're going to put these on the cakes, by the way, I suggest you put it as close to the cake as possible, because your timing, this will have less delay from the time the firework goes off, whereas if you put it here, you're going to have more delay. I would suggest you put it as close to the cake as possible and secure that thing. So I like to set up my show. Once I've got my show set up, then I go back and I put all these igniters on before I do anything with my actual firing system. Well, let's say I've got these fused up. I want to talk to you about a little bit of a safety thing here. But when you fuse these up, I would strongly suggest that you do these in such a way, or in this order. Go ahead and attach it to all your start igniter fireworks. Whichever fuse is going to light your display, attach it to those first. Notice these are off. They stay off until the show is ready. Off. Stay off until show is ready. Then you'll take these things. There's some plug and play, like I guess that's what you call them, where you just plug them straight in. I don't have that type. Mine, you actually have to remove this end, and then you split these two wires. Doesn't matter which one you do is ground or hot, and you insert these. So first, attach all of these to your fireworks. Second, put each one of these into your cues and your systems. I would suggest, as you go along, if I put this in Q1, like I said in the previous video, get a label that says Q1. Also, I suggest these labels, if you want, where I do this on most of my fireworks, especially the first one to go off in the display, I put where the fuse is so that I will know when, okay, I'm supposed to light it. Let's say my igniter did not go off. Hey, I've got the fuse. I can just light it by hand later. So label it as Q1 or Q2 or whichever one it is as soon as you put it in there so that you don't forget. Well, then you put these in there. You've got these things ready to go. Notice they are still off. Now we're ready for the show. When we're ready for the show, now go back, turn every one of these on first. This stays off. Then, when we're ready to kick it all off, we're ready for the action to happen, then you turn the remote on, check these things, and push these buttons. Now, sure, you might want to check the connections ahead of time so you can turn these on, then turn this on, check the connection, then turn this back off, turn these back off, and turn them back on later when the actual show happens. But the important thing is, make sure this is not on when you turn these on. Because if you're like me, you're trying to get this done, you're hot, you're sweaty, you're frustrated, or whatever, or maybe you're just larky talking, whatever, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take this remote and I'm going to go here. Well, you notice I might accidentally hit the buttons while I'm doing this, and your show is ruined. So make sure that you have this off, especially, you know, I wouldn't even have it in my hand when I'm doing it. Make sure every year you put new batteries in. I know that you're not going to run these batteries down during one show. However, by the time you get to your next show, these batteries will have lost a little bit of life. The stronger the charge on these batteries, the more likely that your show is actually going to go off the way you want. So change these batteries every day. I would say the day of the show, put fresh batteries into your firing system. So that's just a suggestion that I would have. So I hope that you got something out of this fusing video. What I would like to do in the next video is show you how I do put each of my displays to music. I usually do 5 to 6 songs. I want to show you how I do the timing for the fuses. Some of you may have noticed this thing laying up here. I will explain this to you in the next video on how to time for music, or how to just time your show in general. Hope this video helped you guys. I'm just trying to do these to get the information out, to share the knowledge that I've been blessed with, to just help everybody have the best show possible. So thank you for tuning in. Please like, please subscribe, leave comments for the YouTube algorithm. It'll help us get these videos out to more people and to be recognized better. And so thank you for tuning in. God bless.